In 1975, a 24-year-old engineer walked into his boss's office with something no one had ever seen before. A camera, but not just any camera, a camera with no film. A camera that captured images digitally and displayed them on a screen. He had just invented the future of photography. His boss looked at it, thought about it, and told him to put it in a drawer and never speak of it again. That engineer's name was Steven Sasson. The company he worked for was Kodak, and the decision to bury that invention didn't just delay the digital revolution, it guaranteed Kodak's own death. This is the story of how the most powerful photography company in history invented the weapon that would kill it, and then spent 30 years pretending it didn't exist. To understand how Kodak died, you first have to understand how impossibly dominant it once was. It all began in 1888 in Rochester, New York. A man named George Eastman had one obsession: making photography accessible to ordinary people. At the time, cameras were enormous, complicated machines used only by professionals. Eastman changed everything with one product and one slogan: you press the button, we do the rest. The Kodak Brownie camera cost just $1. Anyone could use it. Everyone wanted one. Overnight, photography became a part of everyday life, and Kodak owned that life. By the early 1900s, Kodak controlled 90% of the American film market and 85% of the global camera market. It was one of the most valuable companies on the planet. In Rochester, Kodak wasn't just a company. It was a city within a city. It built houses for employees, funded schools, ran hospitals. At its peak, 1 in 3 jobs in Rochester was connected to Kodak. For most of the 20th century, if you wanted to capture a memory, a birthday, a wedding, a first step, you used Kodak film. There was simply no other option. In 1973, Kodak hired a young electrical engineer named Steven Sasson, fresh out of Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. He was 23 years old, ambitious, and assigned to a small project in the camera division. His task was simple: figure out if the newly invented charge-coupled device, or CCD, had any practical application in photography. 2 years later, in December 1975, Sasson presented his results. What he had built was an 8-pound prototype the size of a toaster. It captured a black and white image at 0.01 megapixels, stored it on a cassette tape, and displayed it on a television screen 23 seconds later. It was clunky. It was slow. It was revolutionary. Steven Sasson had just invented the digital camera. He showed it to Kodak executives. Their reaction was not excitement. It was not curiosity. It was something closer to fear. One executive asked a question that revealed everything about Kodak's mindset. Why would anyone want to look at their pictures on a television? Kodak's entire business model was built on one thing: selling film. Every photo taken on a Kodak camera required Kodak film to be developed at a Kodak lab. It was a perfect, self-sustaining money machine. And a digital camera needed no film at all. So Kodak did the only thing a company drunk on its own success could do. It buried the invention, classified it as an internal secret, and told Sasson to move on. For the next decade, Kodak continued its dominance as if nothing had happened. Film sales kept growing. Profits kept climbing. The yellow Kodak box was on every store shelf in every country on Earth. But behind closed doors, Kodak's own researchers kept warning management that digital photography was coming, and that if Kodak didn't lead it, someone else would. In 1981, Sony released the Mavica, the world's first commercial electronic camera. It wasn't truly digital, but it was a clear signal of where the industry was heading. Kodak commissioned an internal study. The results were alarming. The report concluded that digital photography would eventually replace film entirely, and predicted it would happen within 10 years. Kodak read the report and did nothing. The reason was painfully simple. In the 1980s, Kodak was making 90 cents of pure profit on every roll of film sold. Digital cameras didn't just threaten that revenue, they would eliminate it completely. So Kodak's strategy became a masterclass in corporate self-deception. Invest just enough in digital to appear innovative, while doing everything possible to slow its adoption and protect film sales. They called this strategy managing the transition. What they were really doing was managing their own denial. By the early 1990s, Japanese companies like Sony, Canon, and Nikon were pouring billions into digital camera development. They had nothing to lose, they didn't have a film empire to protect. Kodak finally released its first commercial digital camera in 1991, the Kodak DCS-100. It cost nearly $13,000, weighed over 5 pounds, and required a separate hard drive unit worn on a shoulder strap. It was not exactly designed for the average consumer. In 1994, Kodak released the DC-40, a more affordable digital camera aimed at regular families. But the pricing was designed to protect film sales, not compete aggressively. And marketing budgets for digital remained a fraction of what Kodak spent promoting film. Inside the company, executives who pushed for faster digital adoption were sidelined. The film division, which generated nearly all of Kodak's profits, had total political control of the boardroom. Every time someone proposed an aggressive digital strategy, the same question came back: but what happens to film? Nobody had a good answer, so nothing changed fast enough. Meanwhile, in 1999, a small Japanese company called Casio released a digital camera for under $200. The consumer digital revolution had officially begun, and Kodak was still arguing about film. By the early 2000s, Kodak was in free fall. Film sales were collapsing by double digits every year. The company that once controlled 90% of the American film market watched its share disintegrate in real time. Tens of thousands of employees were laid off. Factories that had run 24 hours a day for decades went dark. In a desperate attempt to survive, Kodak pivoted to digital printing and commercial imaging. It had some successes, but it was too late, too slow, and too underfunded. The company that had spent 30 years protecting film revenue had no financial reserves left to fight a digital war. In January 2012, Eastman Kodak filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The company that had employed 145,000 people at its peak now had fewer than 20,000. The city of Rochester, built on Kodak's success, lost over 60,000 jobs in a decade. The company that invented digital photography had been destroyed by digital photography. Steven Sasson, the engineer who built the first digital camera in 1975, was awarded the National Medal of Technology by President Obama in 2009. 3 years later, the company that had told him to put his invention in a drawer went bankrupt. So what really killed Kodak? Not Sony, not Canon, not the internet. Kodak was killed by the one thing that destroys more companies than any competitor ever could: the fear of cannibalizing its own success. Kodak knew digital photography was coming. It had invented it. Its own researchers had predicted its rise with stunning accuracy. It had years, decades, to prepare and lead the transition. But every time the company got close to committing fully to digital, the same calculation stopped it. Why destroy a business that's making 90 cents profit per roll of film? The answer, of course, is simple, because if you don't destroy it, someone else will. Apple understood this when it replaced the iPod with the iPhone. Netflix understood it when it replaced DVDs with streaming. Amazon understood it when it replaced retail with cloud computing. The greatest threat to any successful company is never the competitor outside the door. It's the new product sitting in a drawer inside the building. Kodak had that product. In 1975, it chose the drawer, and the drawer became its coffin.